there, and we will be there when the disaster
May
comes.
panibago na nga,
Ngayon may panibagong avenue.
platform or
They should
avenue.
learn about it. Diba?
Kayo naman, did you think that there could have been a better coordination between you, the NDCC, and the local government? Ano experience mo doon?
Yes, ma'am, nag-coordinate kagad yung mga battle staff namin din sa NDCC na ganitong nangyari dito sa area ng Tanay. Itong nagawa namin.
And,
Of course, quick decisions were made by Secretary Chodoro. For example,
useful,
yeah.
useful ba yung pinagagawa lahat nitong mga si Alvin, si Gang, at saka si Mary Rose?
Yeah, because
nagamit nyo.
yeah, because information is very important.
Yes.
For example, it was the basis for our decision to get all the rubber boats, where to send them. A lot of the information came also from...
Sir, quick follow-up question. How many of the rubber boats came from the Subic Bay and the Manila Yacht Clubs? Because yung rubber boats ninyo were only about 13 for all of Metro Manila.
Because there are supposed to be rubber boats also prepositioned at the local government. We intervene only when... but one quick decision that was made, maraming mga natrap And the President issued a directive to make the MRT operate 24 hours. And at a reduced rate. Diba? And a lot of trap people were able to...
and they left their cars on the road.
And then our rubber boats saved a lot of people sa Provident because they acknowledge, Tony Kailaw, for example,
Yes, sir, because this was only a point raised by my colleague John Neri in the Inquirer, where he said, well, considering ilan-ilan lang yung mga rubber boats ninyo, there was not really much you can do because the soldiers were already deployed. So, meeting lang kayo ng meeting, and then you would announce the meetings, and then the meetings would be action, but nothing was really happening. And at the same time...
Arlene.
Because Arlene was collating the numbers, but earlier we were talking, and you had not done any collations of how many calls you received. So,
believe it or not, hanggang ngayon, I've never received any word from NDCC on what happened to those mails. I had to make a call each and every time I send out a mail.
Hindi sila nagre-reply?
No, I have to call them and medyo mahirap tumawag. I mean, I can understand that, but I mean, at every time I would send out a mail.
What did you want them to do?
To respond to those calls.
To respond, and
Yes.
what would be the context of the response? I'm following it up, I'm doing something?
I guess it would have been...
After the fact, after they've done their thing, or prior to them doing what
They
it is
didn't
that
give
they're
me-
supposed to do?
Ma'am, they didn't give-
Walang courtesy of a reply, yun ba?
I wasn't expecting a reply at that point, but I guess it would have been good to acknowledge that, you know what, those 14 emails that you sent like 10 hours ago, somebody made it. I mean, that would have been good.
Tina, I mean, what
after
we're...
Ondoy,
Sir,
Pepeng came, and then Ramil, etc.
So,
NDCC people, if you go there, those
how
people...
big is the NDCC staff?
Pagka kasi may emergency, it is activated into an emergency.
How many people are actually
Sir, please
in
include us na
in
your
the command
NDCC
center?
staff.
In the command center.
I'll volunteer.
Well,
Command center.
during emergencies, lahat ng agencies meron silang representative.
Oo nga,
doon.
ilang
Like
kayo?
this,
Ilang kayong
Manolo.
nag-iisip doon,
Pero
sir?
yung mga taga-NDCC, there are about 12 to 14.
12 to 14.
14 people manning the screens.
The key positions.
That's right.
Okay,
But they're
well-
augmented by people from armed forces,
Yes,
PNP, during emergencies.
I know.
But
Okay.
ordinarily, pag walang bagyo, the NDCC people are there monitoring and
Sir,
coordinating.
pag may bagyo ulit, NDCC na kami, ah.
Okay.
That's the deal.
Okay, we will
I'll join
pause
you.
for a break. This is ANC Forum Wired for Disasters. We'll be back.
I woke up at 6 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, which is usually the case. And then I look at the sky and I look at the water and I said, this is different.
With the nation still recovering from the wrath of Ondoy and Pepeng, questions linger as to how the devastation caused by these twin storms could have been prevented. But for Tony Lavinia, Dean of the Ateneo School of Government, a regular class exercise the night before Ondoy hit Metro Manila also served as an important exercise in disaster preparedness.
We're simulating a game on climate change. When suddenly at 8:45 p.m., one of my students who's playing the Philippines in this game, Danny Di Castro, suddenly stood up and said, "Sir, Mr. President," I was playing the chairman of this conference, "Mr. President, I have to leave because the Philippines is having an impending disaster." So I immediately dismissed the class.
With the student's warning fresh in his mind, Lavinia began to more closely monitor the storm. On the morning of September 26th, he called off his classes as a precautionary measure.
I woke up at 6 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, which is usually the case. And then I look at the sky and I look at the water and I said, this is different.
Yet despite the public outcry over the government's response to the storms, Lavinia said the government did its best, given the circumstances and limited resources. Instead, he emphasized using the lessons learned from Ondoy and Pepeng to better prepare for future storms.
The only way we can really be as responsive as we can, or maximize our response, is if we literally come together and work together. The government, of course, would be the enabler, the convener of that, but we need to connect everyone's efforts together.
Lavinia also called for the creation of a government disaster reduction and management agency as the first major step in preventing future devastation.
Believe me, if a year from now, we haven't changed the way we organize, the government particularly organizes its work around disaster, this will happen again. That's why we're pushing for a new law on disaster risk reduction and disaster management that would create a new agency under the Office of the President. It's called the National Disaster Management Authority that would be in charge for all the levels of things needed for disaster risk reduction, disaster preparedness, disaster response, and disaster relief, and then disaster reconstruction. I hope and I expect Congress to pass it in November when they come back from the recess.
In the meantime, Lavinia hopes that his students can take their lessons from the classroom into the real world.
You train yourself to do that by practicing, right? And so I guess the next time around, if I teach this course, I will teach them using Ondoy and Pepeng, that those scenarios can actually happen.
Welcome back to this special ANC forum. Government agencies took much of the blame for their supposed lack of preparedness in dealing with disasters, lack of warning mechanisms, and the lack of simple yet necessary tools that could have prevented the Ondoy and Pepeng calamity.
But what really could the government, the private sector, and the academe have done in the face of a calamity so massive and devastating? Still with us, Defense Undersecretary Ernesto Carolina, our favorite, Dr. Susan Espinueva of Pag-asa's Hydrometeorological Division, Drs. Carlos Arcilla and Mahar Lagmay from the University of the Philippines National Institute of Geological Sciences, or UP-NIGS, and Tony Lavinia, Dean of the Ateneo School of Government. We will begin with the two guys from UP. Okay, from the academe. What you have studied in your years in school could have been practically applied to the situation that happened on Ondoy and Pepeng? Was there anything there that found some kind of practical application?
All right. When this happened, I happened to have done a lot of mapping in the east of Manila. That was my master's thesis area. So when the rains were happening, I said, when Katipunan started getting flooded, I said, oh my God, there's something...
Katipunan
Street, which is very close to UP. Mm-hmm. And that never gets flooded. And so we need to know that there's something wrong, that's going to be happening. And then the rain started pouring for hours. My colleague, actually, Dr. C.P. David, who specialized in floods, he had developed for years now some simple tools for weather prediction. Unmanned, weather station that gives information via texting, rain gauges. So things like this happen. In fact, a rain gauge became so very important because there's a difference in time between the peak flooding and the peak of rain. So if you knew, for example, if you're in a lower area, that an amount of rain passed, there's something called a rain rate, amount of rain per
You
time.
need not be a meteorologist.
Yeah, if you know that's very